everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back with the Survivor Feedback Show here on a Monday afternoon here with one of our great friends, a legend of the Survivor Feedback Show, back with us to talk about everything. Our friend, Hannah Lilnessen. Hannah Shapiro. Hannah, how are you?
Hi. I feel like by this point, tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like I'm more of an RHAP podcaster than a former contestant. Do you think that, have I crossed over?
I've never thought about that distinction in terms of when do you become a podcaster as opposed to a survivor.
I feel like at this point, when I go to RHAP events, people say that they've heard me on the podcast and not seen me on the show.
What about the players? When you interact with the new players, they know that you've been on the show. You don't need to explain to them who you are, right?
No, not all of them. I think at this point, you had your live show outside of LA in La Brea. It was really fun.
I think it's just Brea.
It's Brea. It's not La Brea.
Yeah.
Okay. I went there and I felt like an old lady, like trying to fit in high school. Like I felt like I had to ask people. I was like, "What
old
is
lady?
This? What is this sanctuary?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, that's where you get rewards." And I was like, "Oh, we've all known that. Murgatory." And so in that sense,
you have been on the podcast
podcaster
every season in the new era. It's not like that you haven't been watching in 5 years.
No, I've been watching, but I feel like in terms of like, you asked me, how do former contestants see me? I think they see me as like the old lady that
Gabby.
comes Gabby. Oh, you're Fran. No, Sophie.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like the true super fan current Survivor contestants, the RHAP listeners, they're really excited to know who I am. But I feel like for the majority, for like the other half, let's not call it the majority,
newcomers.
I'm the newcomers.
Casuals.
I'm the casuals that end up on the show. I feel like I'm sort of an old lady that's sitting in their section for some reason.
You are younger than at least several of the current contestants.
It's not an age thing.
Yes.
It's an alumni status age.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not young anymore either. In terms of age, sure, I'm average. But in terms of age of alumni, I think I'm like the kooky old lady that they're like, who's that chick?
Yeah. And what do you think is like the average lifespan? Because I've seen, this is such fun, like meta stuff to talk about, like the survivor lifespan in the community. You're birthed into this world as a survivor player. What's the lifespan really of being like a survivor alumni?
What's the lifespan? I think
where you're really like part of it.
I think different alumni would have different answers. I think I've heard some alumni from like 30 years ago talking about their tribal as if we all remember. For me,
it feels a little targeted.
I don't even know who I'm targeting specifically.
Well, that's long.
It's not
sounds like a little targeted towards me. Yeah.
Oh, no. You see your lifespan, you've extended your alumni lifespan by creating a world in which you're ageless, like a vampire. What is the alumni lifespan? Well, you're birthed, and I think I'm going to give a much shorter answer than most alumni. I think your star shines bright, and then I think we all fade quickly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of alumni could feel targeted by this.
Okay. All right. So then we don't want to start there. Anyway, so Hannah, we're so happy that you're here with us to talk about a very fun week of Survivor 45, episode 11. So we'll get into all of that. But Hannah, I know that you have had a rather trying week outside of Survivor, and I just want to mention that up front.
Thank you. I asked if this podcast episode could be dedicated to my grandmother who passed. And I know that's maybe for some of the viewers feels odd, but a lot of my family listens to the podcast. And so I thought it would be nice to acknowledge my grandmother, Barbara Shapiro, who lived to 92 and was an incredible Scrabble player, grandmother, woman. And so I was hoping we could dedicate it to her.
Yeah, absolutely. We've never done that before. So to Barbara. And do you have a story about Barbara? Did she watch Survivor?
She did. The things that stand out to me is just how enthusiastic she was about. She would send me emails with any Survivor update she found. I think the funniest and the story that stands out in my mind is, she lived in Chicago. I went to school at Northwestern, and I was a part of a long form improv team, the Titanic Players. And even though she couldn't really hear the people on the stage, she would come to every show.
Wow.
Or yeah, she became and if you've ever seen a long form improv team,
Mhm.
it's a lot of inside baseball stuff. So for my grandmother to come meant a lot. And yeah, she would send me all news updates about Survivor. Um, as well, but that's the memory that stands out. She had 7 grandchildren, and she threw herself into the passions of each one.
Yeah.
So thanks for letting me dedicate this. I know
Oh,
you
I'm
don't do
happy
this, is
to.
not a usual thing, but
Yeah.
it meant a lot. That was sort of what my weekend's been. I flew to Chicago for the service, so it's nice to get to acknowledge it in the RHAP community.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to you, and I know that so many people from your family are listening, very sorry to hear about your loss.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. That being said, Hannah,
Mhm.
let's, no easy way to segue back to Survivor.
No, you can segue back.
Okay. So tell me, Survivor 45
Mhm.
has been an interesting season for sure. It's been the 90-minute episode season. Do you like 90-minute episodes?
Okay, as someone who binges in chunks, it definitely makes my
It
binging
was
job
harder.
harder.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a little bit more difficult when you realize you have 90-minute episodes to catch up on. But I think, and I would be surprised if I'm in the minority here, it's so much better.
Hmm.
I love getting camp life moments. I feel like we have more time to really get a sense of, they do these flashbacks about who people are, and the day-to-day of camp life, which for someone who played Survivor feels more an accurate reflection of the show than the really cut up 60-minute episodes. If The Bachelor can have 3 hours, we can get 90 minutes. I think that that's fair. I think it's much better. Do
Yeah,
you
I
agree?
agree. I have seen some people say that they don't like it, but I think that the overwhelming majority of people, like in our world, people that love Survivor, I think if you love Survivor, I do think that the 90-minute episodes are better for all of the reasons that you talked about. I do think that we have gotten to know these characters particularly well. I don't think that there's really been too many people this season where we say we do not even know who this person is, like in many past seasons, even in the new era.
Yeah, I feel like we have a good sense of everyone. I mean, it's not even. Survivor edits aren't created fairly. Um, but I feel like every contestant, maybe we don't have the fullest sense of their strategy, but then we have more of a sense of their backstory. Maybe we don't know every single thing about their backstory, but we know what's going on with them in terms of the game.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. And yeah, it feels like a more accurate picture. It's still just the highlights reel, but I love
Sure.
it.
Okay. So, Hannah, you and I over the years have been talking about this idea that you have of
Mhm.
creating a podcast that you talk to reality TV alumni about the current status of their relationships.
Wow, we've
What's
really
going on?
extended this to over the years. I love it.
I mean, at least over 2 years,
I
2022 and 2023.
where we check in. Are you asking me the status of the Dating Survivor podcast?
No, not
Okay,
yet. Okay.
great.
I'm just setting up that it is an idea that is out there. And people also have the idea that I won't let you do this. I think my only concern was that do people want to be a guest on this podcast? That being said, Hannah, I would
Mhm.
love for you to weigh in on this potential developing showmance that we have officially on the show when Austin and Dee themselves are citing Rob and Amber, the most famous showmance in Survivor, or even I would say maybe reality TV history. What do you think of Austin and Dee?
We got a flashback. I mean, what do I think? I mean, has there ever been a showmance that the romance part has been referenced so late in the season? I mean, I think that's the first thing. They really have kept it under the shelter. I
Rug?
don't know what the
Yeah.
actual under the rug. They've really swept it under the shelter for a while. They referenced Amber and Rob, and we have Dee in the Amber spot and Austin in the Rob spot. And I think if it does play out, it might play out similarly to that season. It seems like Dee is in the showmance seems very beneficial for her game.
Yeah.
And they're cute.
So, well, okay. If we're going to talk about it as a comparison to Rob and to Amber, as somebody who is like a knowledgeable source as far as Rob and Amber information go, that I do feel like it would be a little bit different to that. And not to say nothing against Amber, but I feel like that her win was a little bit more about Boston Rob losing than it was than Amber winning. If you go back, I think that Amber had like 1 vote for her to win and 3 votes that were against Rob to win. I'm not sure if she had 4, if it was 4 or 5 votes. But many of the votes that were the Amber votes were actually like, I'm never voting for you, Rob. So that's why you're going to lose. And so that I do not get the sense that that would be the case in terms of how Dee would potentially be the winner of this season.
Definitely not. No, Dee definitely seems to be considered the powerhouse within that duo. This really, in the year of Barbie, seems to be a season where the women are considered or reflected to be very strategic.
Are you saying?
And the men are not unwinnable. We'll talk about it, but more the goofballs, the farting men.
Dee's everything, and he's just Austin?
Plus a couple idols.
Yeah. Do you think that the Barbie movie is an allegory for Survivor 45 as demonstrated by the guys' night scene?
It seems to be, but I'm also not convinced that we're not going to have a male winner. I'm not fully convinced. I think there are options in which we do, but I really
don't think that we're going to, because I felt like that we had, when the 4 women went to the sanctuary, that they talked about how a woman is going to win this season. And I feel like with all of the careful attention that Survivor puts into the edit right now, and I know I got burned on this in Survivor 39, I don't think they would put the women all together talking about how a woman is going to win the season and then not have a woman win the season.
My money would be more on a woman, but they have done it to us before.
They did do it to us in Survivor 39. And I was appalled that they did that in Survivor 39. And I'd like to think that the Survivor editing has gotten better since then. They're so intentional about things.
They are intentional, but they also throw us red herrings. I do think that the women have been the strategic powerhouses this season. The person who seems like they're gonna win, in my mind, Dee, it is a woman. I just think that there are some underdogs here, like Jake, that might be a dark horse.
Sure.
But it has been a lot of the women went to the sanctuary, then the men had their male barbecue. I've really enjoyed the editing. I think with a 90-minute episode, to go back to what you said, you have a little bit more time for humor, like when they were reading the info about the buffs,
Right.
That sort of, what do you talk about when you can't talk about strategy edit is kind of fun because it feels more familiar as a former player.
I do think that the added time has allowed them to take some more chances with the editing, because I feel like that with the shorter episode, it's like, okay, well, just cut that. It's not important. And I feel like that with the 90-minute episode, it's like, okay, well, how do we make this more interesting? How do we put a fun spin on this to make everything in the episode feel important and fun? And so I do think that they allows them to take more chances in terms of how the edit has been going. This week also, Hannah, we lost Emily. I would love to get your thoughts on Emily and her run here on Survivor 45.
I mean, I'm heartbroken, aren't we all? Uh I usually when I come on the podcast, I go hard for someone and then they get out the next episode. And I feel like if I had podcasted last week or the week
Yeah.
before, it may have been the case again. I mean, we just got so many layers of Emily. I feel like we really got to know Emily. She was one of the most compelling stories of the season. I think she is the story of the season. Someone who is the obvious social outcast in their first tribal council, kind of goes through the rocky hellscape that is Lulu, and then comes out the other side pulling off moves and being considered a threat. She was fascinating to watch. I mean, I feel like she was the person who realized people were more than just stocks and financials. She had everything you love in a Survivor character, and she was extremely flawed too, which I think is fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I think that she was playing like a really solid Survivor game. I mean, she referenced her allies being Drew and Austin, and people were like, well, they're much closer to Dee and Julie. She's like completely wrong for thinking that. But we saw this episode, Drew stuck his neck out to be on Emily's side over the Reba 4. So I think she was playing a fantastic game. Obviously, this episode, there were a bunch of moments where, considering what happened, you wanted to shout through the screen, like, try the puzzle, or split the vote, or don't talk about what you just did to Bruce, But I think all of that you wanted to shout because of how it plays out. But I really enjoyed Emily, and she was definitely a favorite of mine in terms of a television character.
Yeah, Emily was super fun to have on to the show. Do you feel like that maybe like the growth of Emily might be a little bit like over exaggerated? Like did Emily come that far over the course of these like 20 some odd days on the show, or did she have maybe like a bad like first day or two?
I mean, I think that it's hard to say as a viewer completely, but I think in terms of figuring out how to navigate Survivor, it felt like a pretty realistic growth. I mean, how she applies it to her life outside the show is up to her, but it did feel like we were watching a different, more developed version of a person. Those earlier interactions were, sometimes harder to watch, although sometimes was on her side a little bit. The pyramids were built by Egyptians, for instance, but
not aliens.
You know what? I don't think so. But I believed it. It something about Emily I think why she resonated with me and others is if it just felt like so authentic and almost hard to fake. Sure, some people will say, in the beginning, they'll be like, I was this way and now I'm that. And I'm like, okay, maybe. But Emily, it felt like we got all this evidence. We got shown so much. And we watched people warming up to her. I mean, we saw the reaction of her in the beginning, and then versus a little bit of, advice from Caleb and her describing how she changed. We watched how people changed their perception of her. The jury loved her. I mean, that much is clear.
Yeah. Would you say that maybe, is it possible that Caleb actually did her a disservice in the game, where that Caleb, we know his flaws in the game. His flaws was that of being too perfect, too likable, too much Riz. And ultimately, did Caleb infect Emily with the Caleb disease, in that he gave her sort of like the secret code, the computer virus, to ultimately make her become like a likable, more charming person, which ultimately ends up being the thing that people say, oh, we got to get rid of Emily. She's too much of a threat.
Look at you using Riz. Look at Gen Z Rob Cesternino.
I have to keep up with the
I
times, Hannah.
I don't think Emily's problem was that she was too effortlessly charming. I think that she became this strategic powerhouse, and having the jury know that is one thing, but I think people on the beach knew that as well. And I'd like to point out again, she didn't get voted out by a bunch of votes. She got voted out by one vote.
One
I think
vote.
some of the audience will say, oh, she should have done the puzzle, obviously. But I'm like, if she had her vote still, she could have at least slowed down or stopped herself from getting voted out using her vote. So she didn't get voted out by a landslide. She got voted out by one person. So her and J Maya both getting voted out with one vote.
With just one vote. Yeah.
Just
You
one
mentioned the
vote.
puzzle and Emily's decision. Do you feel like that Emily should have been doing the puzzle?
I think that sitting here podcasting months later, you can look at the show and be like, she should have done the puzzle. She could have maybe had been immune, because obviously she gets voted out. But I think it's more nuanced than that. Emily knows herself, knows that a puzzle with a lot of pressure is not her forte. And like I said, her vote was very important too. Her vote could have stopped or altered how she got voted out. So I don't have a clear answer. Obviously, there's some guy on his couch saying Emily's an idiot for not doing the puzzle. But I'm
How
not
do you
a
know
guy
it's a
on a
guy?
couch. I just know it's a guy named Frank sitting on his couch. His kids just went to bed and he's tweeting that Emily should have done the puzzle. But I'm not Frank on a couch. I'm Hannah Lil Nesson on RHAP, and I'm going to say it's more nuanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the puzzle was very difficult. Even Carson said that that's one of the hardest puzzles they've ever done. It was a trap, the puzzle. 4 people tried that puzzle. 4 very smart people tried that puzzle, and nobody even got close in Sweat versus Savvy. I think they knew that this was like something that was going to be you try it and you were going to lose your vote.
I think that Emily, like I said, made a bunch of choices. Everyone's choices were super important this episode. I think this was one of the best episodes of the season.
Wow.
I know, big words, I guess. But I think that's because every choice that was made, it was like a domino effect that sent Emily home. Sometimes you have episodes where someone goes home and small choices didn't really matter or lead into it. It was kind of a group decision. This one, every single person made a choice. You could be like, Julie made a choice to not vote out Austin. Austin made a choice to tell Dee. Drew didn't mention to Emily and Katora that Julie had an idol when he realized that she might know about the plan. Everybody had a role in Emily going home, and it was frustrating and fascinating to watch, and ultimately benefited one person, which I think was Dee. I think if Dee wins, I think this is her thesis statement for why she won. And I think it's a series of choices that were made.
Okay. Of all the choices, and I love what you're saying, of all the choices that got made in this episode, who do you think made the worst possible choice for their own game?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer would be Emily, because she's gone.
What do you think she should have done? Done the puzzle like Frank?
Well, it's hard because I don't even think she's the one who made the most obviously incorrect choice. I'm just saying, if you're going to say whose lack of different choice most upset it, I think there's going to be a camp that loudly shouts Julie. They're going to be like, why didn't Julie get out Austin? She got told it was the number one ally. And I hear that camp. I don't disagree that I think Julie accidentally set a thing in motion for Dee to be in the best position. So some people will shout Julie. They'll be like,
I will not.
I think it's more nuanced. I think as it plays out, I think I definitely feel that sort of she should have gotten out Austin, tried to smooth things over with D, brought Emily and Couture on her side, like,
Mhm.
but it's more complicated than that, you know? She got given information by an ally trying to solidify with her and made a choice to keep that ally. I think Emily, I'm a little confused why in a season where someone has already been voted out with one vote, why splitting the votes is not
Yeah.
even like a real consideration. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I
So
think that's sort of
how
number
would you have
one.
split the vote?
Gosh, how would I have split the vote?
Because I think it's easier said than done here,
Of
because I feel
course.
like that the Reba people ultimately, maybe with the exception of Drew, like I feel like we're not so much incentivized to split this vote. I think that Austin and D were on the same page that they wanted this to happen, and they were able to either like, hey, Julie, this is the plan. Either like the three of them work together on this, or D like got Julie to swear up and down that she wasn't going to, because I think otherwise Austin would have played his idol. But he said, hey, if Julie plays an idol for herself, I'm going to play my thing. I think D had gotten the assurances from Julie that wasn't going to happen. Now, she could go up to the voting booth and do whatever she wants ultimately when she's in there. But I think it would have been like a disagreement that they never come back from. And so I think that Julie felt like, well, I can't get to the end as a lone wolf from the final six. So I'm going to stick with my alliance here. So I'm not sure necessarily, like, I guess Emily herself could have been the person to put a vote on D. But I think
Or
that there was also a concern that maybe hey, now the vote is going to end up being tied.
yeah, I mean, does Emily quietly go to Katura or Jake and say, "Hey, in case there's an idol play, do we put 2 votes on either Austin or D?" I don't know, but
Mhm.
that in my mind, when you ask me, "How do you split the vote?" My answer is not as a group decision, quietly with one other person.
Yeah.
I mean, I there were instances when I was out there where you split the vote more secretly. You're not as a group deciding to split the vote, you're splitting the vote quietly. And I think if Emily had gone to, I don't know, between Jake and Kotoro, who she trusted more, had been like, hey, I totally am on board for Julie. Just in case something gets played, should we put me and you put 2 votes on one of these people? I guess when you're like decisions being made, we didn't see it come out of Julie's mouth. It cut away when she said I would have sat with
Okay.
her in final 3, but we saw the scene where Julie said because of the Bruce move, Emily's too big a threat, and they cut away and she was like, I would have sat with her in final 3 before this. So I guess I have a question for you. Do you
Yeah.
think Katora and Jake knew about what Emily had done to Bruce and Emily was getting ahead of it because they were in on that plan? Or do you think it really was a blunder of Emily wanted the credit, even though Bruce was at the jury, probably already giving her the credit for the move?
So I think that the issue, this is something that Emily talked to me about in her exit interview, was that Julie was asking questions about, but why did Bruce vote for me? She was friends with Bruce. And so I think that what Emily was trying to do was explain to Julie why Bruce was voting for her, and that they kind of threw Julie under the bus to Bruce to be able to get him to think that they were going to vote out Julie, and that Bruce wouldn't play his idol because he thought that there was going to be this plan to take Julie out of the game, which ultimately didn't happen. But that's what Emily was trying to do, because I think she was also worried that maybe Jake might go back and say, hey, you want to
That
know
was
why
my
Bruce didn't
question.
play the
Yeah.
idol? Because Emily was telling Bruce, hey, we're going to vote out Julie. So I think she was trying to get ahead of why Bruce wrote Julie's name down at tribal council
Thank you.
when
That
they had been
explains
close. Yeah.
that's what I assume, that she was afraid that Jake or Katora were going to spill the beans, because the edit or the episode made it seem like Emily just wanted to take credit for a big move, and I was like,
Mhm.
that doesn't make sense. It seems like she's getting ahead of something. So I think, well, some people will consider that Emily's mistake. Yeah, I would have. I think woulda, coulda, shoulda. But like, maybe you get one ally you trust to split 2 votes on someone else.
Okay.
If you're asking how to split it.
Let's take a question, a voicemail
Let's do
question.
it.
This is from Rachel. And Rachel has a question for you about the Reba tribe and that idol that showed up this week.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Hannah. This is Rachel from Michigan.
Hi,
I
Rachel.
was wondering, so the whole idea of Julie not giving back Austin's idol, Austin maybe or maybe not even asking for it back. We don't really have clarification whether he asked and she said no, or if they just kind of let it ride for too long and then it got kind of weird. She never offered and he never asked. But could the fact that Julie never offered be part of what was the nail in like the Reba cohesion? I can't imagine that Austin didn't want to ask. He was probably just waiting for her to offer, and then that sort of tension and dynamic in a tight 4 has to be pretty crippling, and it has to make Austin suspicious of Julie, and Julie know that she's doing something kind of sneaky. Could that have been the beginning of the fracture, or is this the symptom or the cause, I guess, is what I'm asking. Curious for your thoughts.
Okay. This is a great question here from Rachel. Okay. Hannah, let's talk a little bit about this idol. The case of the borrowed or stolen idol of Reba.
Finally, a twist on Survivor has created interesting content. I feel like Survivor is like, we're going to split you up into groups and this is going to happen and that's going to happen, thinking something interesting could be birthed from it. And finally it did by splitting them into groups of 3. Austin gave Julie his idol, and she didn't give it back. Very interesting dynamic. If Julie had voted Austin, if she had written down Austin last second, like Dee didn't have a time to tell Austin to play his idol, like she changed her mind in the booth, not like time for Dee to pick it up, would this have been considered, and Austin gets voted out by his own idol, on par with like Eric Reichenbach taking off the necklace? Like, is there comparisons to that level of thing?
I think maybe comparisons, but I don't think it was just be so linear where Eric takes off his necklace, gives it to Natalie, and then instantly is voted out of the game. I think that that's kind of like the comeuppance that we want to see. I do think that Austin would be considered like making one of the biggest blunders that we've ever seen on Survivor, but I don't think that he could topple Eric.
Thank you. Now we can answer the actual question. I was just curious what your comparative thought was on that. Gosh, is it a symptom or the cause? I mean, it definitely freaked Drew out. I would say it's part of Drew's cause for jumping ship. I mean, that conversation where they're on the beach and Drew is asking her what she's going to do with her idol suddenly. Too much time has passed, and Austin was like, if I ask, does that freak her out?
Yeah. Have you ever had a situation like this where, whether it was on Survivor or in real life, where somebody has borrowed a thing and you need to get the thing back, but that it's very awkward to ask for said thing back?
I don't know that a specific thing like pops into my mind, but the feeling seems familiar, right? It's almost like Austin didn't want to be rude. Is that weird to say, that it's part gameplay, but part he just didn't want to get in a fight with Julie? Yes. I mean, I think it's one of the causes for Drew jumping ship. To answer the question directly, I think it's a symptom of other thing. Like, it's part symptom, part cause. But for Drew, I think it's part of the cause. I mean, even Austin says, I have to flush my own idol now. I wonder what would have I think she would have said no if Austin would have asked for it back. And I think that's part of the reason he didn't.
Well,
I mean,
the
what do
thing
you
about
what do
the
you
idol,
think?
the thing
Yeah.
about the idol is that it's very hard to get the idol back. We're like, well, why can't I just hold it? Like, why do you need it back? And we saw this with Ricard and Shan in Survivor 41, where, you know, you kind of do want to be the holder of things. And then knowledge is power got introduced. And that was kind of like the equalizer of like, oh, maybe I don't want to hold so many things, because maybe hiding the things and giving the things to other people is actually the safest way to keep my things from being stolen. So I think, though, that if Austin asks Julie for it back, like, can't you see her like being like, well, why? Like,
Oh,
what? Like, what? Yeah.
absolutely. But
So it's very
Austin could
hard to
also
get
say,
it
I
back.
found it.
Can you think
Yeah.
of, okay, as a long form improviser, okay, can you think of something that he could say to her to get it back?
Nothing that's not going to be awkward and cause drama. I mean, there's no way to be like, hey, girl, hey, like, can I take my thing back?
Could he tell her somebody has knowledge is power, and that they know you, and that they know you have the idol? You better give that idol back.
No, that's so convoluted. I think that the best way to do it is to be like, hey, I'm happy to give it back to you again if we need it, but it is my idol and I'd like it back. And then if she refuses, she refuses. And then you know, that is what it is. Like,
Mhm.
you could threaten her a little if she refuses. You could be like, oh, so I guess I'm your enemy. I mean,
Yeah.
but why did Austin not just give her his idol? He gave her his more
Yeah,
powerful
so,
idol.
you know, I think that the rules are, and we only saw this in Survivor 42, but I from what I understand from Survivor 42, I think that is non-transferable. I think that Austin can use it as an idol. He can play it
Oh.
on other people, but I don't think that he can give it to other people as a hidden immunity idol. So he gave her the only one that you can give. I think the lesson here for an Austin in the future is, if you give someone a thing, you need a like verbal contract. I'm giving this to you, and then when you come back from tribal council, I expect you're going to give it back to me, right? If you want it now, you have to promise me you're going to give it back to me. I don't think he did that. He just handed it off. And I think that Julie is really like living in that space where there's like a gray area of like, oh, I thought you gave it to me. Oh, you know.
You asked for an example in life that relates to this, and I thought of one as you're talking.
Okay.
It's roommate advice that also applies here because they're
Yes.
basically living together. I learned, and this, if you're if you're living with roommates, I highly recommend you take this advice. If you set rules after the fact, let's say you move in with a roommate and they're always leaving the TV on, and you have a roommate meeting and you're like, hey, I need a rule to be that we turn the TV off when no one's in the apartment. That roommate might be like, okay, Frank. Oh, we're really shitting on Frank.
Poor Frank.
All right, Frank, what the heck? I know this is about me. But if you have a thing where you want to make sure all electronics are off when no one's in the apartment, you set the rule up before you start. So I think you're 100% right that he should have set the rule up at the start.
Mhm.
And also, to compare it to a life thing, you should set rules that you expect in an apartment with a roommate up front. I think that's the nearest comparison.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of feel like I've had this with like my wife will say like, "Hey, I'm called, can I have a sweatshirt?" And then it's like, now that this is hers. And now I can't really ask
Well,
for
isn't that part of your vows? What's mine is yours.
what's mine is yours. Well, I think honestly, I think
Every idol and sweatshirt.
it's a lot of like what's mine is hers. I don't feel like I don't really take a lot of her stuff. But I have this too with my kids also, where they will like take like a computer and it's like, hey, I just need, like, okay, all right, fine. And then it's like, hey, can I ever get my laptop back? Like, oh, I didn't know that you needed it back. Like, yes, I need it back.
Yeah. So basically on Survivor, if you don't set the rules up top, it's going to be like you're in a marriage and Julie is Austin's wife and he's now taken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's no easy way to ask for it back without her saying like, "Oh, okay." To the point where he's like, "Well, I guess I just have to vote her out. That's the only way that I can get the idol, get rid of this now."
I mean, I wonder if he had won immunity again, if he would have used the bolster of winning immunity to sort of try to hard hand her a little to be like, hey, I'd like the idol back. And if she says no, then he's going to flush it either way. Like, I think
Yeah.
if he had won immunity, it may have helped his case a little bit. Ultimately, he had a close ally. Yeah. He panicked, gave her an idol. But I think unless he wanted to sit with her at the end, he probably shouldn't have given her the idol.
I agree. Hannah, does he have an out in that it's not just that he had 2 idols, but he had one idol that was only good up until 6 and another idol that would have worked until the final 5? And could he have gone to her and say like, Julie, like, I'm so glad that you didn't need to use that idol, but I'm going to need that back because I was going to play this idol at 6 and this idol at 5. And now I'm vulnerable at 5. Or does she say like, oh, hey, well, I'll give it to you at the final 5?
He could have tried that. It's mind-boggling to think he had an idol for 6, an idol for 5, and then you have fire. He had a shot at the end, no matter what, because he had 2 idols, and it's kind of wild that he just gave it up. And I think it speaks to the fact that Austin knows and is not really considered the biggest threat out there.
No, he's not.
He's not. And ultimately, I called him Jay for the first half of the season because he reminds me of Jay from my season. But, Jay was much more considered a threat and I think would have kept that protection. But I think Austin has, lowered his threat level to some degree and didn't feel he needed an immunity run or an idol run to the end.
Right. Is Austin... And I feel like we haven't given Austin a ton of credit so far in the season, but is Austin actually doing an incredible job in that he is a big, strong guy who has like found advantages, been part of this majority alliance, has won some immunity challenges, and I feel like is not really talked about as like a big threat that people have to get out of the game? Or has he done too much to hide in this game that he's not considered a serious threat, whereas at the start of the season you would have said, okay, guy's a big threat, he's got to go?
I mean, I think his lack of threatness at this point is more what people are valuing this season. I think it's possible that on another season Austin's playing a similar game, but is considered more of a threat. I think that these strategic women are it's amazing to watch them get their kudos, but it's also clear that that's something that's standing out. When people are listing the threats, Julie, Emily, Dee, we heard those 3 a lot. They're listing strategic women as threats to win, which is great. I love it. But that's what's being valued, seems to be what's being valued this season. And so I think I don't know if it's necessarily that he's doing too good a job or not. I think it's what's being viewed as important this season. I think that there are combinations that Austin, it seems like that Austin could sit with to give him a real shot at the end. It just doesn't seem like that's how it's going to play out based on the storytelling.
Hannah, famously, you documented in a series of interviews all the different archetypes of Survivor, including the nerd archetype. But we haven't really talked much about this season's resident, and I say it lovingly, nerd of the season, Drew. Well, what's been your take on Drew, who won immunity this week?
Yeah, Drew's confusing, isn't he? Because I think that on paper, this kind of nerdy D&D, smart. He called himself the Steven to Austin's JT. On paper, Drew has a lot of what makes, someone's winner pick even. But it seems like the storytelling is telling us that, you know, it's been more of a rough, how do I phrase this? You know, we saw Kelly roll her eyes at Drew during Tribal. It's not great if the jury is rolling your eyes at you. And I feel like the storytelling has reflected that,
Yeah.
where I'm not sure that Drew is kind of getting the support that he thinks he is getting, and the kudos that he may seem to be getting.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I think he's part of the reason the Reba 4 is as strong as they are. So
yeah.
he definitely is, you know, sees the strategy. But yeah, you don't want an eye roll from the jury. I'm no expert, but I don't
Yes,
think that's
that's
what
not
you
ideal.
want.
Yeah. So I think that what you're saying, I think speaks to something that I've noticed in the new era of Survivor, where, you know, we have these 18 people and one person is going to win. But I do feel like that really what the show tries to do is that going back to the old adage of sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And I think that a lot of times that the person who has the non-winning storyline, I think it's a storyline about growth and what they got out of this experience. And I think we certainly saw that with Emily over the course of her journey in the season. And I wonder if Drew is also somebody that when we look back over the course of the season, that there's been a lot in here about him of, oh, you know, I'm Drew, but I'm also Basile. And, you know, I'm usually like kind of like the nerdy shy guy, but I'm also exploring this other side of myself that's about, you know, I don't know what it's like to hang out with the bros and hang and have fun and be this other person. And I wonder if that's the story that we're getting from Drew more so than the story of him winning the season.
I totally see what you're saying about growth versus winning. I think a lot of times losing finalists have stories of growth. You can spot a losing finalist by a big voice that grows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know that that's how Drew's story fully feels to me. I mean, yes, he has moments where he's like, I'm growing out, or based on my camp life, you never would see me as the guy that's winning. But it I don't know. He reminded me like a little bit of Will Wall my season.
Okay.
Just in that I feel like he really knows the show, and on paper like has all the skills and understanding to make it
Both have
happen.
great voices.
Both are really tall. Oh my god, is it just cuz they're both tall white dudes? Oh no. I'm not a complicated podcaster. I just saw two lanky white dudes and thought they're
Mm-hmm.
similar. No, but I think that he plays out the strategy. I think again, you know, I think he's like a really important piece of why the season is playing out the way it is. But I just don't even necessarily see his story as like a growth story. I don't see. You asked about Emily, you know, do you believe her growth from point A to point Z? And I said, yes, I see the difference in how people are reacting to her. For Drew, I wonder if some of that growth is going to happen watching it back and like maybe not taking in all the criticism, because people are mean for no reason. Drew is probably a lovely guy. But if some of that growth might happen, you know, watching it
Yeah.
back and being on the show, I don't necessarily like Emily. I feel like I watch how people respond to her differently. I don't really see that happening with Drew as much. How old is he? Is he young?
I
He
have
feels
to I have to
young.
look it up. I feel like he's maybe 23 or 24.
Oh,
Just to
that's
go
so
back to
young.
circle back to Emily, like
Yeah.
I hope it didn't come across as like disparaging towards Emily. I think I was almost more complimenting Emily and more that I did not feel like that she actually came. I feel like, you know, she had some things that she said about Bruce and maybe like didn't really hit it off on day 1 or 2 with the Lulu tribe. But I feel like that for the bulk of the game, I feel like that Emily like kind of was more akin to this you know, this finished product of Emily. Like I feel like that she came a long way quicker than maybe like people are giving her credit. Like I don't think it was that long of a transformation for Emily. Although I will say that when we had the auction, people were like, I don't even know who this person is. And so maybe she did come that far.
Yeah, I didn't think it was disparaging to Emily. I guess I just get the sense that being out there and experiencing the different people seems to have fundamentally, maybe it was things that already existed in a finished product, but brought out things in herself that she wanted to lean into more. I felt like,
Mhm.
I mean, her speech about her boyfriend and not having considered herself a wife, and it really felt like these were thoughts she was realizing in the confessional in real time. Um, and I don't know, it resonated with me. I believe she I believe she grew out there, but maybe I'm just a sucker for believing it.
I mean, she's talked about it as well. That she did like was very happy with the story that they told on the show.
Yeah, I think if I had to predict with Drew, I think he's not going to be sitting at the end, and I think that the story is reflecting um that.
Mhm.
I think that I he seems like someone who strategically we have a lot of reason to understand what the impact he's made on the season. It just feels like the response from people out there, including the preview for next episode, Julie versus Drew. We've seen
Mhm.
Drew versus Jake. I think that's a great example. We've gotten a lot of, I mean, not like edgic type of negative shit, but like we've gotten moments where I think we're not supposed to be rooting for Drew in certain interactions. You know, did he call Jake a dog? Am I making
I
this
think he
up?
called him a goon.
Okay. Um, but it's not the most flattering thing to sort of
Mhm.
um, you know, get into an argument with someone who has no allies out there accusing,
He's on the bottom. Yeah.
on the bottom. He's been portrayed as a bit arrogant while accusing others of that. But again, I think he's probably a really lovely guy who was thinking very strategically, but the storytelling is reflecting Kelly's eye roll a little. We're learning why
Mhm.
Kelly is rolling her eyes.
Okay. You mentioned Jake. We haven't talked much about Jake in this podcast. Hannah, somebody who has roots in the Northeast,
Yeah.
also a love of the arts. Do you have a fondness for Jake?
Listen, he just passed the bar right before he came out there. Uh I don't know how much I'm supposed to talk about this, but he was sitting next to me at your podcast event. He
Mhm.
was he
A
was to
lookalike.
my
Yeah.
he was to my a lookalike. Hype. What is it? What do people say when you can't say something is for certain? Not hypothetically.
Mhm.
Uh, uh,
Potentially.
no, when you're like you can't say hard evidence, so you say, oh, I'm blanking on a word. This is embarrassing. Um, he a lookalike was sitting near me at the podcast
Mhm. Yes.
event,
Yes.
and I spent the whole evening chatting with this lookalike, and he was just the warmest, loveliest. I had a lot of fun. So I may have a soft spot. Allegedly, thank you to the chat.
Allegedly.
Whew. I wasn't gonna reference the chat too much, but shout out to the chat for getting me the word allegedly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Allegedly,
Shout out to the chat.
one shout out to the chat for thank you for helping
They're
my
part of this.
stream. They're 100% a part of this. I
Yeah.
think the last time I podcasted, I spent a lot of time referencing the chat. So I've been
Yeah,
trying
I just
to.
what I only ask is that don't make me feel like the third wheel of that where you like it's it's a little bit like a road trip and you're driving and like if you like avert your gaze too much to the chat, this thing's going to crash. We're going to go off the road. We're going to end up in a ditch. So, sort of like out of the corner of your eye. Yeah, keep the chat like that's like your instruments.
Absolutely. The chat is on the road trip, but we're in the front seat, Rob. I don't want you to feel like we're not on this road trip together.
We're in the front seat. Just don't say, turn around too much to look at the chat and then we're going to go off the road.
Anyways, allegedly, I was
Yes.
near Jake and spent the evening talking to him, and genuinely found him to be just like a joy to have near me. He was warm and lovely and funny, and I'm not gonna, it's affected my podcasting. I'm not gonna lie. I watched the past couple of episodes, and anytime someone was mean to Jake, I went, don't be mean to Jake. But more strategically, I do feel like he could potentially be a dark horse. I either see him as a dark horse to win, or we're seeing a losing finalist. And the reason I say this is because we've heard so much of his perspective. If he gets to the end, we know exactly why he got there, how he felt at every turn. He really feels like, we keep cutting to how he's feeling, and I keep going, why? And if he wins, I think it explains a lot about why. I also think, he said in the preview that he's a knife in goat's clothing or something like that. I think
knife
that,
in goat's clothing. Now,
did he
I
not
know
say
that
a knife in goat's clothing? What did he say?
I don't know.
Said,
Well, I
like,
don't know, but I mean,
a
there was
wolf
some
in goat's clothing?
there was some question about upset the apple cart. If that's that's an expression.
No,
But a knife in goat's clothing.
In the preview, he implied that people think he can be beat at the end, but they might not be so correct. A wolf in goat's clothing, potentially. But basically, I think he's not completely wrong. I think that
the reason wolf in sheep's clothing, if we're gonna nitpick.
I'm gonna say he's a knife in goat's clothing. And here's why. Because, his story to the jury has basically been, he tried to stick his head out for Caleb, got knocked down, and ended up unable to be a part of the votes. Well, who's the first member of the jury? It's Caleb, who felt like Jake stuck his neck out for him. A lot of times, the first member of the jury votes correctly for the winner. I'm not 100% sure of the statistics of this, but I could see Caleb being a jury advocate for someone like Jake. So while I do think that D is the dominant strategic force this season and seems to be the winner, is my guess. We'll talk about Julia as well. But while I do think D is like a leading force, and I love the strategic women this season, I just wouldn't be completely shocked if someone like Jake goes from tree to supporting character to leading role, and that's sort of his story, and the jury likes him.
Okay, well, let me just play for you that clip, which you do have the quote right.
Julie and Rue, they are at war with each other.
Next time on Survivor.
Time to blindside somebody.
I agree. I'm not out of this game. I'm a wolf in goat's clothing.
Yeah.
He's a wolf in goat's clothing.
That is what he said, but that is also not an expression.
It's not an expression, but in the Survivor world, I think he's trying to be like, you think you can take me to the end, but you can't.
Oh, okay. So he is now he has taken a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that he thinks that he is a wolf. Okay, I see what you're saying. So he is now in like using goat in the Survivor context, that you think you can beat me at the end. I'm actually a wolf.
Yeah. And I want to make it clear. I mean, I feel like people who have been listening to the Hannah Nesson pod for however many seasons I've been doing this, you guys,
believe it or not, for 11 seasons?
Oh my goodness. This is why I'm an old lady. You all know that I always root for the women, and I love the women, and I'm just displaying the
Who's
board
getting it twisted? You can't say that you think a man could win if he gets to the end. You're not even saying you think he will win. You're just saying that you think he could. He might win.
I'm just saying that I feel
you
like
can't be a feminist and say a man might win.
Of course you can, Rob. I'm just saying I'm not used to I'm not used to being the one being like, well, it doesn't necessarily mean this.
Frank, get a grip, okay?
I know Frank keeps bullying me from his couch. Frank is upset about his own life. He's applied to Survivor 35 times, Rob.
Yes, please. Sarah Cupcake says, won't someone please think of the men? Yes. No.
I thoroughly, if I had to, like, Yes, there are a lot of strategic, wonderful women left. I think for some reason it feels like Julie is being built up as this huge threat, not because she's a mom. We all know moms get screwed at Final Three, but because she's Julie, she's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
But she's being built up. Katura, I loved getting to her story.
Sure.
I just don't know how much strategy over the season we've seen being portrayed from her. And so if D is my, the threat level that she was able to lower and get to the end, and I'm thinking of who, the dark horse is, the guy who just passed the bar has a shot.
Okay. So many different things I want to follow up with on that. I personally think that I also have Jake more in the category. For me personally, I don't think that Jake is going to be the winner of the season. I think that Jake is also, like Drew and like Katura, I think that these are stories that we are seeing of their growth from this experience. I think that that's ultimately the story that we're getting more so than the story of them winning the game. But I do think that Jake, if he can get to the end, has a lot of friends on the jury. Can I pivot back to Julie? That you said something very interesting about the mom and how the moms get screwed. Did you do a what's my archetype about the mom?
I did a double episode, one with Denise and one with Julie. Not this Julie. Julie from, oh my God, what
Survivor,
was
The Edge of Extinction.
Edge of Extinction. It was a double episode about the mom archetype. I was always fascinated by the mom archetype because when I was on there with Sunday, who is now hanging with my grandma, she would always get asked questions like, as a mom. And even in the reunion show, Jeff said, as a mom, what did it feel like to like go on this adventure by yourself? And I was fascinated by an archetype so loud with some people that every question got filtered through this. And I think that of course mothers can win. Let's just put that out there. Denise, one of my as a mom archetype podcast ladies, was a mom, won the show. This idea that Julie can't win or can't be beat because she's in this archetype is wild because so many of these mom characters kind of get this reaction by the jury of, I thought you were my mom and you betrayed me, like screw you, either an angry jury or people underestimating them. I think that Julie is the threat that everyone is saying, but I think it's because she's Julie, not because she's the mom archetype.
I felt like that it's a trap for people to fall in. Like, I haven't liked it this season that she's Mama J. She is the mom. And I feel like that with Denise and her win back in Survivor Philippines, like, I don't think that nobody there, and it was a little bit like she was playing with a lot of like older players in Penner and Mike and Lisa and artists. Like, there were a lot of like older players that were around. So she wasn't really considered to be the mom, even to Malcolm. I think that Malcolm looked at Denise more like an older sister, more so than a mom. And in the case of Julie, like, I think that she probably like had like a little bit more of her identity tied up in being the mom to the other players. And so I have thought it has been a trap for players to go into, but they do talk about Julie, especially after she makes this big move this week, as that being a mom is a strength for Julie.
Yeah, and I talk, just to address it, I talk on the Just My Archetype podcast with Denise about how being a mom wasn't a defining thing out there for her, even though it obviously is a central thing in her life. I think I think Twitter in general has been confused maybe by this thing that moms can't be beat.
Not Twitter.
Maybe not Twitter. Or X, whatever it's called. I haven't updated my Twitter.
They're never confused.
I just think that, so many people who have considered themselves the mom, we see it with Cochran and I want to say Denise, but now
Dawn.
Dawn. Oh my God. Thank you. Cochran and Dawn. I mean, time and time again, there's so many examples of this, but where people feel deeply hurt by people they consider the mom out there. And I think the clarifying thing with Julie is that people just consider her, caring and kind, but also a badass. Like, I think it's her. And it's, I also think that's part of it, is that I think it's not the archetype. I think it's her. I think the other thing is that sometimes out there, certain people are built up as threats to benefit other people's games. And I'm not saying Julie isn't incredible and wasn't incredible, but other people like Dee or Drew want to build up like the boogie monster to have a shield. Some shields are real and some are just smoke when you punch through them. And I don't know what it is with Julie, but I do think that she's being used as a shield, a Reba shield, the red shield of Julie, in that, and we even see it this episode, the jury shocked as she gets out the huge threat of Emily. But who was actually behind that? Who's going to get the credit for that in the end? Is Julie going to get voted out for this move and then Dee's ultimately going to get the credit? Maybe.
Yeah. Do you think that, is it possible also that there has been a little bit of a shift as Survivor has had more younger and younger players come into the game? Do you think that maybe moms are perceived differently by the younger contestants, where really the majority of people in the game, I'd have to look at all their ages. I think it's really all 20 somethings that are out there. And I think that maybe, I think Katurah might be a little bit older there with Julie. And do you feel like that maybe that the players who are like in their 20s might view a mom as like maybe more multifaceted and layered, as people who maybe played like 5 or 10 years ago might look at moms as a little bit more one-dimensional?
No, I don't. That's too short an answer. I get what you're saying.
Such a good thesis.
Oh, it brilliant thesis. And I'm the obnoxious teacher that just writes nah at the bottom and gives you a C for no reason, no explanation. I mean, I can only talk from my personal experience, but I think that, I think that when the show pigeonholes women into every question being through the filter of this mom thing, whether you're with a bunch of 20-year-olds or various ages, it becomes more different to differentiate yourself outside of that. And I think Julie has, because of all the things that make her Julie, not just this mama Julie thing. I unfortunately, I think that when you pigeonhole someone into just the mom role, it can be difficult to break out of that. And 20 somethings will view that as very limited as well. That was my experience out there. I don't know, why did Chris Hammonds not get asked, as a dad, how did it feel to have this adventure away from your kids?
Or even Bruce. But you know what? I think that, Hannah, if I ever play again, I think I'm going to make that my identity. I'm going to tell everybody, please call me Daddy Rob, okay?
Oh my gosh.
I'm the dad out here, everyone.
Everyone call me Daddy.
Call me Mr. Cesternino, all right, please. I'm the dad.
I'm the dad.
As a dad.
As a
daddy. Yeah.
Should I go out there again and just be like, as a dog mom?
As a dog mom, yes.
When I have to walk my dog 3 times a day, I think of someone outside of me. But out here, it's all about me.
It's my time.
Oh man. That's really funny. But
Yeah.
I understand your thesis statement. I guess I just disagree with it.
I just am so interested to know why Julie, and who is Mama J, you know, that they've talked so much about her as being the mom, and just what an asset it is, and how big of a threat that makes her, when that just flies in the face of everything that we've learned about how people play this game and vote for winners over the past 22 years.
Because I think it's her contradictions from the archetype that make her such a threat. she was constantly crushing it in these individual immunity competitions.
Yes.
Like, yes, she didn't get the necklace, but it was her against a bunch of men, her against Bruce. She's strategic, she's cutthroat, she's all these things that make her a threat, and she's loving and caring and I guess motherly. Also, and this is, again, I believe that she's a threat, and I believe she has a good chance to win, especially like if she were to get to the end, especially after this Emily vote. But let's be real, we don't know how she'd do at the end. We're just being told what people who want to build her up as a threat say she'll do at the end.
Mhm.
I think that at one point in the season, someone said that Mama Julie was just Dee's weapon. And then that disappeared and she became the threat and Dee became the lower down threat. And then this episode, it felt like she was Dee's weapon again to some degree. So everything is about perception. I was talking to my boyfriend about Survivor and who wins based on past seasons. And he said, this feels less like a survival show and more like a PR competition. And I said, yes, that's exactly what Survivor can be, because the jury is not sequestered. I know Jeff had an interview where he said, the outcomes wouldn't be that different, but it might be. This is not a sequestered jury, and it's a PR competition. And Julie's PR is that she will beat everybody at the end. So who benefits from that being Julie's PR?
Julie. Yes. Okay.
Julie doesn't benefit from it, I don't think. Unless she gets to the end.
Yes. Okay. Could you have too good of PR? Do you need to then hurt your reputation at all? Do you need a scandal here and there?
I mean, I think Dee had PR that was too good. And then someone this episode said, well, Dee's lowered her threat level. So do you need a scandal?
I think so. You could have too good of PR.
Too good of PR.
Yeah. Because I do think that everybody's so hyper aware and hyper focused on who's the biggest threats, Hannah, that you have to you can't ever be, look what happened to Emily. That your threat level gets too high. People are like, oh, gotta go. And that's why I thought what Dee did this week was so great, in that she made that big move, but then did it in a way where I don't think people are going to be giving her any credit.
Nobody is going to give Dee credit, but there is a way to trace it back to her. It's a game of PR, but it's a game of targeted PR. You don't want everyone to see your PR campaign. You want the jury to see it and everyone else to see it when it's too late. But yeah, it's not a survival show. It's not a calculated. No one at the end sits there with a calculator and says, this person made this many right moves, won this many immunities, they're the winner. It's all a game of what people think is happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Let me bring in.
Thank you.
Let me bring in a question from your friend and mine. Alex Forstenhausler has a voicemail question.
Hi, Alex Forstenhausler here, longtime listener, fifth-time caller.
Another tall guy with a great voice.
Yeah, he's basically Drew and Will Wall, according to me.
Okay. Drew and Will Wall coded. Alex Forstenhausler.
My question is for Hannah Shapiro. Hannah, this new 90-minute format has given us more time to really get to know the players. What are some fun character-building moments you'd like to see included? Survivor ever released an extended cut of season 33?
Should they go back to Survivor's old seasons and release 90-minute episode for Paramount Plus?
No, thank you.
You wouldn't want extended episodes?
Do you know how much of that's a reoccurring nightmare I have, is that they just pull footage from our season and start airing it?
Oh my God.
What can you imagine? Do you want a young Rob footage of more of the things you said to be?
My nightmare is that they put my season on Netflix.
Oh God, I mean,
and that I just go on, wake up every morning and have people yell at me about stuff that happened 20 years ago.
But to answer some of Alex's question, I wish Zeke and I always joke that all of our breakups were shown, but none of the love we had was. We had so much fun, and there's so many goofy things that I feel like a 90-minute episode could show. I remember we were in the shelter and it was after the Mari vote and everything was tense. And Jay came up and was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And I said, "We're discussing Ralph and how we have to get Ralph out." And Ralph was the character we made up.
Mhm.
And we just decided that everything was Ralph's fault. We had to get
Mhm.
Ralph out. He was, throwing the rice in the fire. He
Oh my
was
God.
betraying people. I wish some of that had been shown. I also, if you go to YouTube, there are all these
Would have been
great.
confusing for some of the viewers, I think.
Well, those viewers need to smarten up. I also think that a lot of the secret scenes that are like on YouTube would have been lovely in the show. There was one of Dave and I talking about how similar we are. There's just a lot of character building moments that I loved in the secret scenes that I wish, had been a part of the episode. And I think that would have existed in a 90-minute episode. We also, back in my day, pre-Sanctuary, we didn't have these flashbacks. We didn't have photos from our youth, which is great because no one needs to see my photos, my prepubescent photos.
Mhm.
But no, I don't want any new footage released from my season.
Okay.
Is there anything from yours, any of your seasons that you would want?
I think that there's probably some funny, like, deleted scenes or secret scenes that I had found. There was like a website or a link to somebody had like made like a YouTube playlist with like a bunch of like the like deleted scenes that never like got posted from however they used to do the secret scenes at that time. And I went through and like I watched a couple of them, but then I kind of got bored. But it would be nice to, see some old like found footage of stuff. But really what was also nice was that somebody had tagged me, they found some old photos from Survivor. And that's really, I think, the happy medium.
Just a montage of old photos
Yeah,
instead.
just find some old pictures.
So, Alex, to answer your question, we don't want any new footage released. We just want a montage of old photos, please.
Yeah,
from
that's
when
fine.
we were islandy and hot. Yeah.
That would be super swell. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me ask you a question that I got on Twitter today. Okay. This came
on
to us
X.
on X.
On
Well,
X.
I mean, people know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Right?
But, I mean,
yeah.
Old X now.
So Allie sent me a message. Okay. And Allie said to me about how the Facebook groups are up in arms about Julie using the idol. You know how the Facebook people are, right?
I know, but not from firsthand experience. I heard they were very upset Ken didn't win. So I get the gist of it.
So the Ken fans were upset that Julie used the idol because they think that she stole it from Austin. And they don't really understand how idol passing works. And it got me thinking back to the origin of the idol. Is it possible that Julie views the idol as a communal Reba idol since they all found it together? So first off, do you look at what Julie is doing as that she stole the idol like the people on Facebook?
So my boyfriend's Matt's bike got stolen this week, unfortunately. Yes. And they took his bike apart piece by piece and stole it. He did not give them the bike. They broke it apart to steal it. It's upsetting. If you are listening and you stole Matt's bike, please return it. We are not happy with you.
Please.
We won't ask questions. Just drop it back off.
Just give back all the pieces.
This is really annoying. There was a point here, and I've completely lost it in my anger about the person who stole my boyfriend's bike. Compared to that, Julie did not steal the idol. My boyfriend Matt did not hand his bike to a thief and then forget to ask for it back. He had 2 locks on it. They had trouble getting the second lock off, so they broke the wheel. Did she steal the idol? No. Did she operate in a gray area and no one pushed her on it? Yes.
Yes.
To the Facebook fans, I know you're
It's
not
a little bit
only-
of hearsay. I'm trying to find some comments from the Facebook fans.
Oh, okay. Please be nice to me, Facebook fans. I don't want to fight. I don't want to beef with the Facebook fans.
Mhm.
I'm sure their passions are justified.
They're passionate. Yeah.
Listen, to the Facebook fans, at least she didn't idol out Austin with his own idol. I feel like you would have been even more furious. I don't think Julie views it as a communal idol, though, to partly answer your question. I think she views it as her idol.
Yeah.
She used a relationship to get someone to trust her to give her the idol. I mean,
So, Hannah, I think this is so interesting because we have not really gotten we've only gotten other people talking about how Julie views the situation. We've never gotten to see Julie be like, hey, idiot. Like, next time, don't give me your idol because you'll take it back over my dead body, or she's just like, hey, we found it together. This is the Reba idol. So, yeah, I got to use it. I'm so glad that nice young Austin let me borrow the idol because I could, boy.
She doesn't
what a
view
great
it
ally.
she doesn't view it as a communal idol. That's why to D, she said, why can't I get Austin out? She views it. I mean, Drew said, what are you going to do with your idol? It's almost like Drew and Austin were so scared to ask for it back. Instead, they felt the waters out and accidentally confirmed to Julia it was her idol. When Drew was like, what are you going to do with your idol? And she was like, I don't know yet. That's her being like, you called it my idol.
Yeah. So I just wish that we would have gotten from Julie like how she views it. Is she in telling the producers like, ha, look at me, I'm stealing idols?
Yeah, that would have been a nice confessional to include in 90 minutes of a show. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I just want to know where her head is at. My theory is that I think she is like that, and I feel like that they're not giving that to her because she's the mama.
I think Julie being kind of being a real player has been given to her. I think it sort of is implied. I think she considers it her idol, and Austin and Drew sense maybe their gut is like, this woman is not going to just give it back to us. She even said back to Drew, well, you guys have your idol. And Drew said, Austin has an idol. Like there was real clarification in that. But yeah, I would have loved a confessional of how much Julie's thinking about this. Is she like stealing, not giving back the idol as a move? Is she just like, if I don't mention it, no one's going to take it? I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at some of the comments here.
Yeah,
on Facebook.
I just saw. Can you pin? Oh, you're looking at Facebook.
Yes.
From
What
the
do you
chat,
got?
if you pin the Mana comment, just seems so odd to be afraid to ask for it back. She would not have said no to him. I think she would have, Mana.
You're like, why?
She would have said
Why
no.
do you
I'd
need it
like
back?
to. You know what? She could have said this. I would have been willing to give it back to you, but now that you've asked, I'm suspicious and I'm keeping it. I think their gut was that she wasn't going to give it back. I think that's the truth, but only the players will know. And luckily, right here on RHAP, you can see all exit interviews through the end of the season. So I'm sure Rob will ask about it for all of us.
Yeah. Okay. So if we ever get the chance to interview one of these Reba people, right?
Someone said it was the Reba idol. Sure, it was the Reba idol, but she has never said it is our idol. She very much seems to have it. Okay, read these.
It would be, even if she thought, okay, well, it's the Reba idol, it would be very disingenuous to vote Austin out with the Reba idol.
Oh,
like if she did view it as like, oh, it's the idol for all the Reba people that I will use to ultimately vote Austin out of the game.
Let's give Facebook its time in the sun. What are they saying?
Yeah. So I'm trying to find where people were really piling on Julie with the idol. Let me see. And let me see. Maybe this is the one. Okay. All right. Trying to see where like I go by the most likes. This person said, first of all, Austin is a fool for not asking for the idol back. Second of all, Julie should be ashamed of herself for not giving it back. And third of all, Austin is a fool again for opening his mouth. It's really the kind of the
Is that
first one.
Frank?
Yeah.
Is it Frank from
This
Facebook?
is from Rose. Okay. And third of all, Austin is a fool again for opening his mouth because he's got puppy love on his mind. Now, Austin needs to go because he sucks at playing the game. I want Boston Boy or the Geeky Boy. Guess how many likes that got?
I have 10,000.
No, only 170. Boston. This person doesn't even know the names of the people on the show.
He wants he or she wants Boston Boy or the Geeky Boy. That
Boston
makes
Boy
sense.
or the Geeky Boy to win at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess a couple things.
Yeah.
A couple things. One being, sure, is it socially chill what Julie's doing? No, but there is $1 million at stake. So for $1 million, you could be kind of socially uncouth, I think.
Yeah.
Was it foolish for Austin to give her the idol? I think, like we've talked about, there should have been a clear path for him to get it back. But at the time, he seemed like he really trusted her. I think that you really shouldn't give your idol to someone unless you see them sitting with you at the end. And I don't know that he did.
I just feel like that in the way that this is talked about, and also I don't want to like say it's only on us. I think also in the way that the show is presenting it, like when and maybe Julie just isn't giving the confessionals. That there is that possibility that she's not talking about it in this way. But when we talk about like Jesse and Cody and like, okay, I have this person's idol, it's only being talked about like sort of like, okay, Austin was maybe a little bit of a dummy to give the idol to Julie, but it's not talked about at all. Like, oh, Julie, what a shrewd move to get the idol from Austin and to keep it for herself and work on getting Austin out of the game potentially to keep that idol. It's not even being talked about from Julie's perspective.
Yeah, that's really interesting because we heard Drew talk about it. We heard a confessional of Drew guessing whether Julie was going to give the idol back, but they didn't give us a confessional of the answer to that question. That's really frustrating. And you're right. It's a commentary on how storytelling affects our perception, where if we heard this from Julie's perspective, and maybe if she had idled out Austin, you know, really making it her move fully, obviously it was, you know, I think credit can be given to Dee a little bit more than Julie because it seemed to be her desires. But if she had done, you know, idled out Austin, maybe we would have heard more from her perspective. So, yeah, I think you're right. I don't know why we didn't have our own question answered.
I don't know. It's going to be a great question for Julie whenever we get the chance to talk to her. Okay. All right. Let's go back to Dee, who we haven't talked about that much, surprisingly. Here's a question from Josh Green about Dee.
Rob, Hannah, what's going on? It's Josh Green calling in from Philly. I want to talk about Dee because the reality is if she were a man, people would be saying, oh, she's playing one of the all-time games in the history of the show, just an incredible game. And we're not hearing that as much. But the reality is that every vote, every decision, everything really, the way Dee wants it to go has been happening since the beginning of the game. So I really wish she would get more credit. It's great to see that Julie is getting credit on the island as a threat. But what do you guys think? Do you think that Dee is playing as strong of a game as I think? Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Okay.
Is she not getting credit? Maybe I'm too out of the community.
Yeah.
The Facebook comment wants the nerdy guy or Boston kind of win.
Geeky guy.
The geeky
boy.
guy. But
yeah.
from now, maybe I'm completely wrong. And in older seasons, I think Dee would have been, you know, as a female player who hasn't yet. Oh, no, she did win immunity. As a female player, maybe she would have been thrown to the side a little. But I feel like she is getting credit. Am I too optimistic?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that Dee has been properly credited so far. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with if she was a man playing the game that she's played, that we would be talking about her as one of the all-time greats at this particular point. I think that if she goes on to win the season, I think we can always like leave room to reevaluate that. But I do think that a lot of people probably would have her as the most likely potential winner at this point. No?
I mean, after the episode we're discussing, I think was a master class in how to play Survivor. And if there is someone other than Frank on Facebook not giving her credit, then she definitely deserves credit.
Frank on Facebook said she's a little overrated.
She solidified a relationship, whether showmance or not, that she knew would always tell her the truth. She found the truth.
She kept her 2 number ones from going after each other.
She kind of like strongholded Julie into voting in the way she wanted, while also throwing Drew under the bus enough that the cleanup should be less on her. She still voted for Julie because she knew that Julie was going to vote the way she wanted. She trusted her gut on that. She didn't protect all. She didn't write. She could have panicked and wrote down Emily's name, hoping just in case Julie wrote down Austin's, but she kept strong. No one's going to be seeing this as her move. Their attention's going to be on Julie. Yeah. Julie's attention's going to be on Drew. I mean, she played this so beautifully. And while potentially, I mean, you could say that her game was not as strategically, she was part of a core group that were all sort of sharing credit. I feel like this episode really demonstrated Dee's incredible Survivor playing. I'm always one to think if this person, presented differently, were a different gender, race, whatever, like, would they be getting more credit? I guess I think that Dee is seen as a threat. And while her threat, quote unquote, has been lowered, I think that's part of her great gameplay. So I'm not sure. I agree with you, caller inner, that she should be getting a lot of credit. From my perspective, she is.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I wonder maybe if there's anything going on with like the players on the island, why they are not seemingly seeing her as big of a threat, but maybe they don't know to what degree she has been really, where it seems like that the Reba players have mostly kowtowed to what she wants to do. She also was very important in how this vote came to be, and ultimately what she wanted to have happen in this vote ultimately was, we saw her also where Drew gave in when he wanted to see Jake go out, and she insisted that it was going to be Kendra because Kendra said Dee's name. So she's been a really powerful force in this post-merge game. Maybe the one time she didn't get what she wanted was when she said vote out Sifu and everybody voted out Sean.
Yeah, but Sean asked, it seems, to be voted out. So yeah, I mean,
and she said, I think I'm still going to vote out Sifu.
If you want to star Krista Todd, because I was going to respond to her comment, the "if I were a man" sounds like a Facebook casual. The "if I were a man," Krista Todd says the "if I were a man" thing sounds like a Facebook casual issue. I would say I don't fully agree with this, Krista. I see what you're saying. I'm arguing less that this idea of switching someone's identity isn't an important discussion, and more that it isn't specifically with Dee, because I do feel like Dee is getting the credit. I think even in modern Survivor, we've seen a lot of instances where, or a handful of instances where, you can say, well, if this person did the same thing and they presented this way, how would that have played out? I think it's still an interesting discussion, because I think stigmas and stereotypes are still very much a part of Survivor. I guess I just feel, responding to the voicemail, that specifically with Dee, I feel like Dee's powerhouse status has been given credit, but we'll see how it plays out the rest of the season.
Yes. Okay. We have Mama J, but Dee is mother.
I saw a tweet that said that Emily is mother. Mother is another Gen Z thing.
Are you mother?
Am I mother? I'm not mother.
I don't know.
Who am I? Wait.
Why are you not mother?
I don't think I'm cool enough to be mother.
Why
This
not?
is like two retirement home people trying to use slang. Are you a mother? No. We're sitting in like rocking chairs in the retirement home talking about who is mother. I don't even think we're using mother correct.
No, we are. I think you're giving mother.
What
If
is
Emily
it?
is mother,
Okay,
why can't you be mother?
Rob, what does it mean that I'm giving mother? If you're
That's
gonna
your-
say this,
That's your vibe that we
what
are.
does it mean?
We are all sat and we are here, and we're just like absorbing what you're giving. What do you mean? What is mother?
I'm saying, how am I mother?
How are you mother? I mean, look at you. You're here giving us all of your takes.
Brianna,
all
here,
this time?
pin Brianna Jasmine's thing. She says, you have the mother Riz. I think she's teasing our usage of all these slangs.
No.
So thank you, Brianna.
Being serious. Yes. Dr. Christian Hubicki says Hannah is very much cool enough.
Oh my God. If Christian says I'm cool enough, I'll change my defense. That
yes.
Christian, thanks for listening, being in here and saying I'm cool enough to be Mother Riz. Slay.
Okay.
That's
right.
that's what I'm a Gen Z coworker. They go slay. They use slay so much.
Can I play a question for you? This is from Ben. Ben has a question for you.
Hey, Rob and Hannah, this is Ben calling. Rob, I had such a great time in New Orleans last week, and it was really just so great to meet you and to be at my first RHAP live event. And I want us to take this time now to eulogize Emily's incredible turnaround in the game. And you may have noticed that Austin referred to the Reap Before Alliance as the Mafia in this episode. So my question is, how did Emily's game change? I'm going to say for the better when she joined the Mafia with Drew and Austin. Looking forward to hearing your very serious responses.
Okay. All right. Here's that quote from Austin.
Somehow, we've been able to slip by everybody, and we've just been taking people out like the frickin' Mafia, one at a time.
How did your game change for, I'm going to say the better, when you joined the Mafia with Matt and I?
What do you think?
This is the Big Brother thing you promise. Is that correct?
Yes.
I told you before I started, I watched Big Brother on Twitter. I have no clue.
But this was the biggest thing from Big Brother on Twitter.
Was it? My Twitter was just about how Zach's brother was kissing this girl. That's all I know about this season of Big Brother. And I warned you about this.
And he still is.
This just makes me sad for what could have been a final three with Drew, Emily, and Austin, where Drew and Austin realize Emily's about to sweep their I think that Emily was not incorrect in thinking she had a strong in with Austin and Drew. I think that she was correct, and I think it could have easily played out differently. And you're gonna have to explain this Big Brother thing, because as I said, I only Big Brother on Twitter.
There was a woman, and her name was DJ Bowie Jane. And
I know her. Yeah,
she made an alliance with Matt and Jag, and it was called the Mafia. And then she got to the final three with Matt and Jag. Okay. And then she got voted out. Jag won the final immunity and said, Bowie, I'm sorry, I have to take Matt. He's my best friend. And then Bowie Jane got to ask one question to decide who she was going to vote for. And she asked Jag this question.
How did your game change for, I'm going to say the better, when you joined the Mafia with Matt and I?
That was her question for the final two. How did your game change? I'm going to say for the better when you joined the Mafia with Matt and I.
Then I was going to say the next thing I'm going to do is ask you about a show you don't watch, But I realize you watch all the TV.
No, a lot of
There's
the
nothing.
shows.
There's nothing
But
you
it was
don't
very,
watch.
and people loved it. People loved it when Bowie Jane said this, that she took this one chance to ask a question to determine the winner, and just used it to shout out her alliance that she had with them.
Oh.
It was very unserious.
Okay. I mean, my Big Brother knowledge is limited to Twitter and the fact that I spoke with Zach's parents after, oh my gosh, after your live show in Brea or La Brea.
Mhm.
And I got to speak to his parents about what it's like having two sons in the reality TV
Yeah.
show fame world. They seem
Okay.
very focused on Corey going back to law school. So
Yes.
that's as much Big Brother as I have for you.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry. So that I deserve this. Okay, we're gonna give Hannah a moment to collect herself after I jeopardized whether she wants
Okay.
to come back. So Hannah's gonna collect herself, and
Can
then
we make-
in a moment come back and determine and tell me her decision whether she wants to continue on with this podcast.
Stay tuned. Who knows
Stay
which way I'll
tuned.
go?
Okay. All right. All right. So while Hannah is taking a moment, let me just tell you a little bit about what's coming up here on our schedule for tonight. We are going to, it is 5:00 Eastern right now. In just a couple hours, we're going to be back with our coverage of the premiere of Big Brother Reindeer Games, a 2-week event here coming on CBS. If you didn't know, it's coming up. No Bowie Jane.
How did your game change for, I'm going to say the better, when you joined the Mafia with Matt and I?
But if we could get Bowie Jane, maybe we want to get her into some coverage of Reindeer Games. And so we're going to have that. That's going to be somehow a 2-hour episode, which is going to start tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So we will have Reindeer Games night 1 coverage live tonight at 11:15 p.m. Eastern time. Myself, Karen, Mary, and Puya. I'm sorry, Melissa and Puya coming up tonight at 11:15. Sam, stop me if I'm getting anything wrong. Tomorrow night, in addition to Reindeer Games coverage live after the episode, we will have for our patrons, our Survivor Q&A. Mary Kwiatkowski will join me for that one. That's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then we have a very special, I don't even know if we can announce it. A huge podcast coming up for Reindeer Games on Tuesday night, when it will be Oops, all Wurtenberger special for Reindeer Games coming up. Zach, Corey, and America will join Taryn and myself coming up on Tuesday night for a jam-packed Reindeer Games special on Tuesday night. And then on Wednesday, a break from the Reindeer Games as we get back to Survivor episode number 12, when Jamal Shipman will join me for the Survivor post-game show at 9:45 p.m. Eastern time, coming up on Wednesday. So just a jam-packed next couple of days, and then back to more Reindeer Games coming up on Thursday. Join us all week long for the celebration of the Reindeer Games here on CBS. Okay. All right. Hannah is going to have a decision. Hannah, what did you decide? Did you want to continue on with the podcast?
I've decided to continue on for the next 11
Did you
seasons.
say your podcast changed? I'm going to say for the better when you decided to continue going.
I think it really helped that I continued and committed myself to the next 11 seasons of Survivor with you.
11 more seasons.
11 more.
Yes. Are you considering quitting Survivor at any point?
Always.
Is it just for the podcast that you keep going?
Potentially, possibly.
Because that is
yes.
like just the greatest compliment that I could get, of like, I wouldn't watch this show anymore, but I keep up with it just to do the podcast.
It's I will neither confirm nor deny the allegations set before me.
Yes. Okay.
I genuinely enjoy doing this with you and with the RHAP community, and I like that I get to be, an RHAP podcaster.
Yes.
Who happens to have lived on an island once.
Yes. Okay. Well, it is a great treat for me that you come back. Okay. All right, Hannah, then we talked about Mama J. We talked about how whether or not you are mother, but is it time to hear from
It's time.
mother?
It's
Okay.
time. No, she sent you. Oh, this is probably too much behind the scenes. She sent you 2. Is this the first or
I heard that the first is better.
The first is better, but hopefully loud enough.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Hi, Hannah. Hi, Rob. This is always my favorite podcast of the season. Anyway, I'm going to ask the same question I always ask, which is who you think will be this year's winner of Survivor. Last year, I predicted the winner, and this year, I am going to predict Katora wins, and I'm predicting this because I want her to win. She reminds me a lot of Hannah's grandma, who she just lost, my mother-in-law, Barbara, who had to overcome a lot and who did more than survive. She was thriving. She also reminds me of Hannah's grandma because Katora is a social activist. She's fighting for social justice in the legal work she does. And that's exactly what Barbara did her whole life. So I'm going for Katora. And let me hear what you have to say.
Okay. All right. Hannah's
Wow.
mom, Liz.
My mother, everybody. Wow. I know that my mom's question is always, who do you think is going to win?
Big
with her
Riz
prediction.
Liz.
Big Riz Liz Slade. I'm surprised by her guess, I guess, but I think that it is, if Katora has listened to this podcast, I hope if you're on the current season, you don't listen to every podcast, and you're an hour 46 in. It's a huge compliment. That was a very sweet prediction. We have barely talked about Katora.
Because you've said in the past that if you're a player and you listen to every podcast, touch grass. That's a quote.
I did not say it that harshly. How dare you? And you have said, if you're a player and you listen to every podcast, get a life, losers. End quote, Rob Cesternino.
I said that to you off the record, Hannah.
I just think that it's hard if you're a contestant to listen to discussions of people that might not know you fully.
Yes.
What a beautiful sentiment from my mother to Katora.
Yes.
We learned a lot about this episode.
Sure.
And it seems like Katora is a very is a fantastic person who I'm so glad that she was able to tell her story fully. With Bruce out of the way, we got to learn more about Katora, and I don't disagree that she seems like a fantastic person, and there's a reason she's out there fighting as hard as she is. I think as a winner's pick, I'm just surprised because I don't feel like we've had a full strategic story told by Katora. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I feel like that if we're just going off of the edit, position-wise, I think that there's a shot for Katora. I feel like that we haven't really gotten her story of what her path to the end is ultimately. And sure, like we've had we've had winner edits in the new era, like Erica or Gabler, who we have not really seen like what their strategic vision was and how they ultimately just got to the end. So I think that it's certainly the door is open for Katora. I just feel like that we haven't been shown her story in terms of her path to a victory yet.
It's if she is the winner, I think that the storytelling has done a disservice, just like it did for Erica and Gabler in describing fully how they got from point A to final 3. I think that Erica's speech about being learning to be, I think she said, the quiet one in the boardroom, speaking up. I wish that I had seen more of that sprinkled throughout the season, so I understood what her vision was.
Sure.
And I think a lot of the exit press with Erica, for instance, showed relationships and strategic conversations that we didn't get to see. And the storytelling, which is usually so good, did her a disservice by not explaining those to us. And I feel like Katora, I would have a similar feeling if she does become the winner. And for that reason, I unfortunately don't know if she is my winner's pick, just because it would be disappointing to have not seen that.
So you're, in a way, you're really rebelling against your mom, who
This is I think that the biggest honor is that my mother compared Katora to my grandmother.
both
And
grandmas.
both grandmas. Also, she had, there's a lot we can pin some something from the chat if you'd like, but she, the work she's doing as a lawyer and where she comes from and wanting to stand up for those in the country that have similar backgrounds that she does is really important and beautiful. I just wish we saw more of her strategic journey on Survivor to be paired with it. I know a lot of the earlier edit in the show was a kind of a her versus Bruce. Learning more about her story, it's clear that her reaction to someone who considers himself an authority figure like Bruce might be a specific response to some of what she's been through in life.
Mhm.
But that was a lot of her story. To answer my mother's question in full rebellion, I guess based on this episode, it really seems like it's Dee's game to lose, and Jake is my dark horse because I feel like his sort of underdog story has a place. I think obviously if Julie could get to the final 3, we've been told again and again and again how much she will win. But I think she's being lifted up as so much of a threat, and idling out Emily with 1 vote is not going to help with that.
Yeah, I'll also say there's still time in the game where I feel like that a lot of people didn't consider Marianne to be one of the favorites to win. And then she had a really big vote at the final 6, which changed certainly my perspective on whether or not Marianne was going to win, where I think I probably would have come into the final 6 thinking that Marianne was really somebody who I would put in that Jake category of being a dark horse to win. And then after the final 6, thinking that Marianne went from being a dark horse to being the favorite. So a lot can happen in 1 vote.
A lot can happen. But we are pretty close to the end.
Yeah.
And, if you imagine sort of what needs to happen for each player, some of what needs to happen for the other players seems like more of a possibility than Katora. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't have a chance. My mother has predicted winners correctly before, but to me, Jake's story would be complete with his climbing off of the bottom. Dee's story makes sense. Do you have a prediction that differs from mine?
No, I'm with you. I think that Dee is the most likely person to win the game. But, I do think it is interesting here in, you and I played the 39-day version of the game, and here we are in the 26-day version of the game. And I don't want to get into the hardness of 39 days versus 26 days. But here we have
you
Emily.
Had to listen to that a lot from alumni?
I hear it
sounds like
I hear it a lot. But here we have Emily, who gets voted out on day 21. So there are 5 days left in the game, but in the 39-day game, if something happens on day 34 and there's 5 days left, like I would say that maybe the die might be cast a little bit more. Whereas here in the 26-day game, there's still like 20% of the game that's left. And I kind of feel like that things that happen late in the game might have like a big impact in terms of how the winners get decided, maybe more so in the new era than they might have in the old era.
So you're saying more can change?
I think more can change because there's still 20% of the game left. Whereas like in the 39-day game, like maybe that's like only like, a lesser percent. More has happened. It's been more of a marathon over the 39-day game, as opposed to like what happens in the last. And even, I mean, you know that even in like the 39-day game, a lot can happen between, you know, the final 6 and the end.
I think a lot can happen, but I'm not sure if some of these deep-rooted perceptions of players are going to drastically change. And what I mean is that I'm not sure that Julie in 5 days is going to be able to lower her threat enough that people are going to want to sit with her at the end. Or
she might get her way in, though. That she might like they really built it up that she's the one who's the best at making the fire also.
True. I mean, listen, if Julie wins, it wouldn't knock me out of my seat. I just think in terms of guessing a winner, I can't list everyone. And if I can't list everyone, I have to narrow it back down a little. And you know, it's hard when you can't. I think every person left could have a story in which they win, and I think that's part of the fun of this new era editing. Drew, Katura, people who aren't necessarily being like, other than my mother, being named as like people's first choice winner pick. You know, I think that they could find a way to tell their story as a winning story. Yeah. And with 5 days left, you're right, lots can change, but you know, when you go to Vegas, you have to put the little ball on one of the numbers in the spinny thing. You have to choose. You can't put a ball in every number, I don't think, unless I don't understand gambling, which I probably don't.
You can, but you will. I think you like, again, I don't know if I think that the casino might let you do that.
Oh, you can.
You will lose. You will. Yeah.
But then you lose more money because
you will lose more money than you make if you win.
This metaphor was not that great. My point is, if you have 1 or 2 balls to put down, that's how much you can afford to put down. You can't break the ball in half and start spreading like the end of Mean Girls when she splits the prom queen crown and just starts throwing pieces. You can't do that with gambling or winner predictions.
Yeah. This is really more of a metaphor about podcasting than actually playing Survivor.
Yeah.
That we don't really do that so much of like, Hannah, what is it like right now to podcast about Survivor?
Podcasting is like trying to gamble, but you only get 2 little metal balls.
I think there's only 1 ball, I think.
Wait, you could get 2. You could buy a second one.
But they only spin 1.
Fine. If there's a prom king and queen, there are 2 crowns, and I'm giving them to Dee and Jake. You can't break the crowns like a Mean Girls. There we go. I should have stuck to what I know, which is Tina Fey movies, not gambling.
Okay. How about this question from Chuck?
Okay.
Chuck says, Rob, who are your top 3 survivors to bring to boys' night? And Hannah, who are your top 3 survivors for ladies' night?
You begin. Gentlemen first.
Okay. Now, is it my personal guys' night or is it just the ultimate survivor guys' night?
It's your personal ultimate survivor guys' night.
So this asks me to pick my friends.
Pick 3 friends you want to have to guys' night within this survivor community.
Okay. Well, you got to have Stephen Fishback at guys' night.
Of course.
Yeah. Let me see.
Thanks to this person for making Rob really isolate people he's going to invite on his time.
But like who's most likely to be listening to 2 hours into this? Okay. So,
probably just Christian Hubicki.
Now, Christian is like, you know, I did kind of have a guys' night.
You don't have to choose Christian. I would choose Christian for my guys'
I did kind of have a guys' night with Christian Hubicki and Jesse earlier this year.
Are you inviting them as your next 2 spots?
Tyson is also a good one to have for guys' night. Boy.
Wait, you can only choose 3. You only have 3 little metal balls to put on the thing. Yeah. So between Tyson, Jesse, Christian, and Steven, who are you voting out of your guys' night?
Yeah.
You chose this question.
Okay. All right. Well, now, so I feel like now if I have guys' night with Tyson and Steven, are they going to just be like talking all about when they were on the same season together?
That's a risk.
That is a risk. Yeah. Okay, and these only survivors, right? I can't pick
it's only
Mike
survivors.
Bloom or Chappelle or
Why are
anybody.
you making this harder for yourself?
Well,
It's
because I'm
just
saying,
survivors.
because in the chat, people say, what about Bloom?
What did the question say? We want to answer the question
Who are your
accurately.
top 3 survivors to bring
Then
to guys' night?
Answer. Yeah, he said survivors.
Okay, so like who else is going to be fun? I'm trying to go like who will have what jobs at guys' night.
This
Malcolm
is really
would
up
be
to
great
you.
for guys' night, right?
Malcolm, you're adding more people. You got to narrow it.
Who
Rob.
from your season would be good for guys' night?
Zeke makes an incredible sort of spread of food.
Zeke would keep it fun at guys' night.
I think Zeke would be really fun for guys' night. Boy, I mean, Paul is a musician.
Paul Wachter.
Are you choosing Paul Wachter?
I think it would be Paul Wachter. Would be huge.
You keep adding people.
Yeah.
You have to subtract.
Not Taylor.
Wow, that was a strong opinion. Why not Taylor?
I don't know.
Just because he wears porn kills shirts?
Yeah, I think so. I think
You're too
he's gonna
deep
come in. I don't want him checking my browser history or anything. Jay would be great at a guy's night.
MTV's The Challenge is Jay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're
Oh my
still adding
God.
more people. You need to narrow it down to 3. You just keep adding people.
I was with Bryson Wen in
yeah.
New Orleans.
Don't
There's
keep
too
adding
many guys.
people. You need to choose 3 men.
All right. I guess let me narrow it down to bros. Okay. My all-time bros to hang out with for guys' night. All right. Malcolm, I put him on the Mount Rushmore of bros.
All right,
okay?
Malcolm, Mount Rushmore of bros.
What do I go with just the 3 amigos? Do I go Malcolm and Eddie and Reynolds?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, go for
I mean,
what you
that would
want.
be like the broiest guys' night ever.
Is that what you want out of your guys' night?
If I was gonna do guys' night, that might be the move. Trying to think of some more recent bros to bro down with.
Who are recent? Well, Drew is now a bro. He's
Drew.
broed.
I think Drew is pretty fun.
I bet he's fun. I would love to play D&D with Drew. Drew, if you've listened to 2 hours of this podcast, I'm sorry that I brought up that Kelly rolled her eyes at you. I just, yeah,
this is all right. So, all right, Malcolm and Eddie and Reynolds, the ultimate.
That's your
bros,
answer.
The 3 amigos.
All right.
Guy night. Okay. Who would you hang out with on for
girls' night?
Yeah.
This is harder.
Day.
This is harder because I feel like I can't just narrow them down to who I'm broing out with, right?
Yeah.
Who are my 3 girls' night girls?
What are you looking for girls' night? You want people that can party, people that you can like really talk to?
I want people that won't want to party, that will just be too nervous to enter the bars and will end up all at home.
Okay, so you want some homebodies.
Let's see. I met Franny at your live event backstage before we went on. She kept going, I'm so nervous and I have to pee. And then she kept chugging more water. And I kept saying, Franny, stop drinking more water. You'll have to pee more. I like that energy. I think I'll choose Franny for one of them.
Franny would be great for gals' night.
Because like me, I think she would. I want to choose the too nervous to party.
Too nervous to party.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great if we get Matt Blankenship at guys' night.
Add him in. I mean, you chose your bros.
I know. I went for like a really broy guys' night.
You know, maybe yes. Thank you to the chat. I think Gabby should be my
Gabby
second.
can party though.
Yeah, she can party. She is surprisingly. She can really, pop a keg and go upside down.
She does keg stand?
You heard it here. Oh,
Gabby does keg stands?
Has keg stand at every event. No, this is defamation. I like the idea of Franny and Gabby and I walking into a bar. We need a third one. How about financial analyst Emily Flippin?
Emily, wow.
for the most nervous, self-deprecating girls'
Yeah.
night ever. It's myself, Franny, Gabby, and financial analyst Emily Flippin. I answered
Yes.
the question.
Okay. Wow. All right. What a night.
What a night we'll have.
Okay.
I'm really excited about my girls' night. Thank you. There were so many people to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. It's not an easy question. All right. It Electric says, as somebody who has directly gone against what their main alliance wants, do you think Austin could have managed blindsiding D and dealt with the blowback?
Well, this is the big question of the episode, isn't it, Electric?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it is this episode seemed to be people kept making the choice that they didn't want to deal with the blowback. Austin didn't want to deal with the blowback of D. Julie didn't seem to want to deal with the blowback, I guess, of D as well. Could Austin have dealt with the blowback? Potentially. If, sometimes it's so emotional to go against what people you feel slightly indebted to want. I remember after, the rock draw or whatever, it happened 1,000 years ago, but I felt emotionally connected to people who had put their neck out for me. And it sometimes feels like your gut is now telling you that the right choice is to not upset them. And it's easier after the fact to realize you just felt connected to them. You didn't want to upset them. When at the time, it feels like strategically, maybe it's the right choice. Maybe Austin was like, oh, well, strategically, I need to include D, when that's more of an emotional pull. But if he had blindsided D and they'd gone back to camp, D, being the only one left out of the vote with Julie, may have felt isolated enough that Austin could have talked her off a ledge. I'm not sure, though. Everyone this episode chose not to, have big blowback when they got back to camp, which would have been fun for the finale. But I think Electric, to kind of put into perspective what it feels like out there, is sometimes it feels like the emotional pull, like you internalize, so it feels like strategically the right decision is to also tell your ally or not go against it. But sometimes you have to. Sometimes you're able to be like, you know what, strategically, I'm just going to see if I can piece it back together at when I get back. But like you said, Rob, we got 5 days left of the game. Sometimes you're like, what's the smoothest sail ride into the end?
But not often the best path to victory. Got to make some waves.
Potentially. Unless the wave is too big that it knocks you all the way to the jury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
What do you think of this?
Well, I don't know. I feel like that. Are you getting the sense that Austin is going to win? You haven't talked about him at all in terms of your winner prognostication.
I think Austin is very fun, more strategic than I think he's being given credit for. Based on the storytelling of who it always seems like he's being sort of influenced by others. It feels like he's not the winner, but this is the soundbite they use right before they announce him as the winner on CBS. Do you feel like he's going to win?
I don't. I feel like that his story to me is like a not necessarily one of him. Like, I feel like that he was in a great spot with two idols, being a big, strong guy who could win challenges, being very well liked, good social game. But I just wonder if we'll look back at this and say, like, was his mistake telling D about this plan to vote out Julie?
I mean, I think so much of Austin is like boiled down to what I always say when I come into these podcasts, which is that perception becomes reality. And if the perception is that Dee and Julie and even Drew are determining what Austin does, then that's the reality. If Austin is not considered a threat to win, then he becomes that. And it doesn't matter how many idols he finds and gets stolen or challenges he wins or how likable he is. sometimes the perception is just the reality out there.
Hannah, who's going home next?
Probably Julie or Drew, right?
I feel like it's more Drew than Julie.
Okay. I could see that. I mean, Austin has loyalty to Drew, but has more loyalty to Dee, it seems, who has loyalty to Julie, who really wants Drew out.
Yeah.
Katora and Jake just don't want it to be them.
Yeah.
But at least the preview is making it seem like it's a showdown of Drew and Julie. If Julie gets Drew out, I still think she might be the next one. I love how when all the women are sitting in the water, they say, well, we're pretending it's Jake because we always pretend it's Jake. But I feel like Jake and Katora, for now, there's a lot of drama within the Reba 4. And so I think they're in an okay spot for the next tribal, potentially. So yeah, Julie or Drew.
Okay.
Probably, yeah, I don't disagree with Drew.
When we saw the women in the water, they were so bored that they were reading their buffs. Did you ever get so bored that you read the buffs?
I don't remember reading the buffs, but
what did you do when you got so bored?
We talked about food.
Talked about Ralph.
We blamed Ralph for all the happenings that were occurring. The buff conversation felt like a realistic portrayal of what a lot of conversations out there actually are. And it was fun to watch that be broadcast. I don't know if you relate to this, but I feel like the cut up version, so much of it is just, you're just sort of talking about anything. I mean, you don't have go see a bunch of your friends, but all put your phones away and spend 4 hours together. You end up, talking about so many random things.
Yeah. Should more people do that? Hannah, have a no phone party? Will you have no phones at girls' night?
Will we have no phones at girls' night? I think we're all too nervous for that. I chose nervous people. I think. Not everybody. I think it's good to sometimes put your phone down and focus on the people around you. And instead of scrolling on your phone, read your clothing tags. See where they're from.
Machine washable.
Were you surprised that the buffs were made? Were they made in Spain?
I was not surprised because I have to order buffs for the patrons of Rob as a podcast, and then I know that they come from Spain. So,
I'm wearing today my RHAP buff. We've gotten 2 hours into the podcast.
Beautiful.
They come from Spain. This is the RHAP buff. You can buy it at the RHAP merch store, probably.
Yeah.
And this necklace is from Zeke's wedding.
Yo, nice.
There we go.
Yes. Hans in the chat says, I only do phone swap parties. Did you ever do that? You ever, when you hang out with your friends, just trade phones?
Isn't that that's not a swingers thing?
Do swingers trade phones also?
Isn't that like a swingers thing where you all put your phone in a basket and then you pick it out and whoever's phone you get, you kiss them?
So I heard about doing that with keys. But I didn't know that swingers also, and so we love. Okay,
Super Hans. If you're a swinger,
we don't want to yuck anybody's yum. But do swingers also? Hey, here's my phone. Look at whatever you want.
I assume that's what Hans meant by the phone swap party.
Interesting. I mean, because that's one way to really spark a conversation. It's like, oh, I don't want to put my phone down. It's like, okay, well, you know what? That you still get to have a phone in your hands, but it's somebody else's phone in the room, and then that'll really spark the conversation, Hannah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would like that.
Yeah, well, that's why it would be provocative. What would you do? You got somebody? Would you go right to the photos or texts?
Photos or text? That's a really, really good question, and one I've thought a lot about. Probably text. That feels more juicy and intrusive.
I think I would go to photos because I think you could just scroll the photos real quick for anything wild.
I would put my name in the search button of their text to see if they've talked about me recently.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so smart.
Just neurotic, but thank you.
Okay. Well, Hannah, I feel like we
Yes.
covered it all here today.
Did we cover it all?
Is there anything from your personal
Let me look at my
reference? Look at your notes.
My notes are this big. There's
Yes.
only 3 things. I wrote.
That's what I would do also. If I got your phone, I would go to the notes app.
Yeah, I only wrote 3 notes, so my notes were not that extensive.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could have written more notes. Is there anything?
No need.
Is there anything left to say? Chat, is there anything we have not talked about? I have done my best. Any questions from the chat? I think we can end on any questions from the chat. It's always fun to do this. I feel like this is the latest into the season we've ever podcasted.
Yes. Do you feel like you know more?
I mean, I think an episode or 2 ago, I may have, like I always do, gone off on a whole thing about how Emily was going to win, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely know more. I feel like this is really the part of the season you start shaping up and seeing who the winner is going to be, potentially. Although, again, when Austin wins, they're going to play us talking about.
Yes. Well, I hope so. We love to be wrong. What fun is it to know everything that's going to happen?
I know. I have been so wrong before. You could play clips of me swearing up and down. It's going to be Shan.
Yes.
Or I don't know, who else did I bat hard for?
We'd have to go back and take a look. I know your mom was right on the money about Jam Jam.
We have a question. Red Wings 883 asks, is there any chance that Katura's comment about everyone hating the Final Four fire making foreshadowing that they got rid of it?
I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think so.
Unless someone is able to do a puzzle and then choose to get rid of it. Probably not. Mm-hmm. Probably you have to know what's coming. Oh, we have Spencer Walsh says, what D&D class is each player in the final 6? Do you know enough about D&D classes?
I really don't.
Cesternino?
I would have to go to D&D class to know.
Listen, I'm a newbie, but I will try if that's what Spencer Walsh says. But if you have to go attend to your family, you can also go and I'll just ramble.
They're
about
attended for too.
Okay,
yeah. I just got a text from my wife. It looks like that they're building some kind of gingerbread stadium.
Let's see. We have D.
Yes.
This is going to be where people are like, Hannah is too new to be doing this sort of.
No.
What is she, like a warrior sort of, or?
I mean, you could just be making these up.
I could make up a D&D category. Austin has all his like bag of tricks and like idols and stuff, so he's a bard. Oh boy, this is getting bad. Drew, what would Drew want to be? Matt, what would you want to be? Give me categories. I'm blanking on everything. Wait, hold on.
Do you want me to list classes?
Yes. If you're listening to this part of the podcast, I'm just going to have my boyfriend real quick list the classes.
Okay.
Bard, cleric, barbarian, fighter, druid, monk, rogue, wizard, sorcerer.
Okay, Drew's a wizard.
He's a wizard.
Because he's so tall, you can imagine him with the pointy hat.
Yes. Imagine how tall with a pointy hat.
Please. Katura is a oh no, I forgot all of them again. This is getting bad. The chat can jump in. Let's see. We got left Katura, Jake, and Julie. Julie is
She could be an artificer.
Yeah, she's an artificer. And what does that mean to you, Rob? She's the classic artificer, which we all know what that is. Yeah.
They create temporary magic items.
There we go.
Which is kind of like what she did with the idol, right?
Pretty much. And Jake is a cleric of the law, so he's a cleric.
Yeah.
And then Katora is a
Wow.
druid.
Yeah. Well,
which we all understand why.
yes. Okay. Well,
this is the worst place to end on. We really just offended a whole group of RHAP
yeah.
fans.
I mean, you do make the game sound super fun. So I got to get into it sooner than later.
Listen, I'm new, but I've been creating for the D&D listeners. I've created a new character, a gnome named Ketchup, who is a fighter. And listen, I get it. I get it. We all get it. We gotta pivot and then wrap. You're the professional. Let's pivot then wrap.
Let's pivot. Okay. Hannah, what else is going on for you outside Survivor?
Oh man. Well, we some of it we've discussed earlier. I just got back into town.
Yes.
I am a few pages away from having a pilot finished, so I'm getting some writing done. There's some other creative things that are supposed to be coming out soon. If you're the guy who filmed a creative project of mine recently, can you please respond to our emails so we can get our footage?
Yes.
So that's been really fun. Basically just
is the editor's name Frank?
It's Frank from Facebook. If you are Frank,
well, I think you might have alienated Frank from Facebook a little bit.
I've done my best to not alienate the entire Facebook casual community.
Mm-hmm.
But Frank, if you're out there and you're mad because your 35 applications went nowhere and you stole my footage for my project, please respond to my emails. Yeah, I will let the RHAP community know if there is ever some project I would like you to go watch. And, the dating podcast, we still have to get off the ground.
Who would be your dream first guest?
On the dating podcast?
Yes.
Probably Franny and Matt. If we're going to do a Survivor, we gotta start with the nerd romance. And who knows, maybe D and Austin, depending on how this season
D&D
plays
and Austin.
out. D&D Austin. D and Austin would be great. I'm curious if their romance blossomed outside of the show. Do you think it did? If you had to put a quarter on if they're together,
I would put a quarter on it did not.
You heard it here first.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Cesternino does not believe in love. That's okay. I'll go. We all have our quarters, and we only have so many.
Yes. Okay. But what a shock it will be if we find out that it is.
If they're together and they, Austin has won.
Yeah. Okay.
I love podcasting, and I really make an effort to not be spoiled. And because of that, I'm often wrong. But right now, I'm going to confidently say all my predictions are correct. And listen to this podcast back when everything plays out exactly as I've said.
Look, it's fun to like a week ago. I think I would have said, "Oh, Emily's the winner." I think Emily's gonna win. We feel like Dee could win, and then if she gets voted out Wednesday, we'll have to figure it all out all over again.
Then Jake could win, and if Jake gets voted out, this is Julie's game to lose. And if Julie gets voted out, Katora, and if Katora gets voted
an exciting
out,
season.
Austin. And then if Drew's the only one left, then Drew wins.
He could win. Druid. Okay. All right. Hannah, where can people keep up with you?
That's a great question, Rob. You can follow me at Hannah Lil Nesson on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter X.
How's the TikToks going?
Define how are they going?
Have you been creating any TikToks recently? I know you have in the past.
I've created a handful, and I'll create more if you follow me at Hannah Lil Nesson. I think TikTok's really fun. I think it's fun that you don't have to have a lot of followers to get like 3 million views on a video. That's kind of cool.
That's the algorithm.
I know it's fun. Are you on TikTok, Rob? Because I remember I was there when you started it.
Yeah, you were there. You were there. Okay.
Years ago.
It was back in, I think it was 2019. when I first made a TikTok account. I consume many TikToks, but I make very few. The Rob is a podcast TikTok account is really what you should follow. We make a lot for Rob is a podcast. I personally do not. If I make anything, we put it on Rob as a podcast.
I believe that the first TikTok you ever made was at a party at
Yes.
Adam Klein's house.
Yes.
Where that was the night he met his now fiance, Kaylee.
Wow. It must have been like February or March of 2019.
Something like that.
I remember it well. And you were hilarious that night. I was rolling that you impersonated a Olympic gymnast. Do you remember this?
I do, because Adam's fiance Kaylee is incredible and she's a gymnast. And someone asked if I was a gymnast too. And I said, yes, I went to the Olympics. And I just stuck with that.
And you were talking to this this guy that was there, and you said it, I guess, like initially like as a, just something to entertain yourself or the people that we were talking with. But this guy was like, it must be an improviser, because he was just yes-anding to the degree of what he wanted to see and know everything about your experience as a gymnast.
Do you think he was in on the joke? The way you say improviser,
no.
I think he really believed it.
I think that, he definitely, he believed it. And I think he was captivated by your compelling story of being an Olympic gymnast.
Because why would someone lie in that way? He probably thought.
Right.
What
He's
sort
like,
of
wow,
insane
I think I've
person?
met one of the most interesting women in this city.
Oh, this is just making me think of this girls' night and how many lies we'll tell.
Yes. He wanted to follow you on all of your social media channels.
Yeah, it turns out, if you say you're an Olympic gymnast socially, people are interested.
It's like, let's keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah. We did not keep in touch that night.
Yeah. Great night.
Oh,
okay.
boy.
All right. Well, Hannah, thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me back.
Anytime. The podcast door is always welcome, no matter what you want to talk about. Are you watching anything else on TV besides Survivor?
Yes, I am.
What are you watching?
So
Squid
no
Game,
spoilers.
The challenge.
No spoilers in the chat. You know what? I'm even gonna mute. I'm gonna
Close
look
the
at
chat.
the other chat because
Yes.
my boyfriend and I are doing an early 2000s rewatch. Veronica Mars, The OC, and I'm rewatching Gilmore Girls, and we're creating a map of all the different actors and the crossovers from different shows. I'm in season 1 of Veronica Mars, trying to figure out the mystery. Who killed the girl? Who killed Amanda Bynes? No.
No.
Amanda Seyfried. It's been so much fun. So that's the TV I'm watching, is my early 2000s rewatch.
Did you watch Figgy play on Squid Game?
I have to. I was going to, but then someone said I had to watch the OG Squid Games first.
No, you could jump right into Squid Game : the challenge.
Okay, then now I'm going to. But I can't believe I'm excited for Figgy. She got engaged and became a squid. It's very exciting.
Yes, and she is number 33 on Squid Game.
Just like Millennials Gen X. I was thrilled for her. I was just waiting until I thought I had to watch the original one.
No, you could jump right in.
Zeke said I had to watch the first one. Okay.
With all due respect to Zeke, you can jump right in.
He lied to me. Okay, great.
I think you get it. I think my sister, she did not watch the Squid Game movie or series, and she jumped right in and is enjoying it.
No, it was cool. Figgy was in the banner for the show.
Yeah.
In terms of reality TV, finished up the Golden Bachelor.
Yes.
I really have been sticking to my early 2000s shows. Really remembering a time when you could figure out, who was building the website based on who was the Wi-Fi next door. Flip phones, Kristen Bell. Veronica Mars has a slew of incredible actors. Adam Scott has a cameo. I didn't realize Kristen Bell and Adam Scott had been working together. The Good Place is one of my favorite shows. So I didn't realize there was, that
crossover.
That crossover. I highly recommend all shows I've listed. We got to season 2 of the OC. These early 2000 shows each have like 26 episode first seasons.
I know.
they're so many episodes. So we're really
Now
chugging along.
26 episodes. That's like 4 years of shows.
Oh yeah. But it's all really fun. And yeah. So in addition to writing stuff, that's sort of the TV I've been consuming.
Yeah.
My Gilmore Girls rewatch is, that's just a show I rewatch. So it's like, but I've got into the season 7, which is the Amy Sherman Palladino Liss season, which is, sadder. But yeah, thank you for having me on. Thank you to the chat and to the listeners at home, to my mom.
Yeah,
for
chat was great
calling in.
today. Thank you to Liz.
Thank you to Liz Nesson, and thank you for letting me dedicate the episode to Barbara.
Yeah.
And it's always fun. And
Always.
we'll see you for the next 11. Do you think it's going to go 11 more seasons? Do you think we're hearing 11 more seasons?
I think so.
Are you going to be the host in a couple more seasons?
Of this podcast?
Of Survivor?
No, definitely not.
Who's replacing Jeff Probst if you had a ball?
I think that it is somebody that we do not know yet. I think
an
it
Australian host or something.
I think that they will probably side with a real host as opposed to a former Survivor contestant.
Interesting. You heard it here first.
That would be my guess.
My guess
somebody
is
that we do not either, if we know of them, it is not in a capacity that has anything to do with Survivor.
My guess is still AI Jeff Probst.
AI Jeff Probst. Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
All right. Will you throw
I'm
your
happy
hat
to
into
come
the
back.
ring?
Will I throw? No one wants my hat in this ring, but if anyone did, it would be there. But no one would want that. But I I look forward to podcasting when AI Jeff Probst takes over. Still.
Okay. All right. Hannah, thank you. Thanks to all of our listeners and live viewers for being here. And it's great to have you here. And
an honor.
Once again, to Barbara. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.